We've all heard about the Grim Reaper, but what about the Reaper's cat? This is the story of a cat called Oscar and the amazing ability that he had. For lots of people who are knowingly coming to the end of their lives, whether that's through old age or an unfortunate terminal illness, there are places that they can go called hospices. Hospices are places where these patients can live in a dignified manner and be looked after by nurses if they can no longer look after themselves to the fullest extent. Whilst these places are a help for many people, they can still be quite lonely to live in. That's why a lot of hospices like to invite animals in to cheer up the patients and to provide them with support and love through the difficult times that they are facing. Time and time again, animals have proven that they have the ability to provide unparalleled levels of comfort and love to patients who are coming to the end of their lives. More often than not, people might expect the animals who help to be dogs, as they are naturally friendly and loving creatures who want nothing more than to give that love away. So it might surprise you to learn about a cat called Oscar who provided comfort to hundreds of patients. But that's not all he did. Oscar had an amazing ability. He could seemingly predict when a patient was going to die and provided them comfort in their last moments. Oscar's story began in 2005. When he was born, he was a beautiful black and white tabby who had been born in a local animal shelter along with a number of other little kittens. Luckily for the cat, the local hospice was looking for a new addition to their team of animals and decided to adopt the little furball. He was taken back to the Steerhouse Nursing and Rehabilitation Center on the Rhode Island Hospital grounds in downtown Providence. He became one of 6 cats who lived at the hospice, with his new home being the 3rd floor of the building, the floor where people with dementia resided until the end of their lives. Oscar was initially sort of a very scared cat, said Dr. Dosa, who worked at the Steer Hospice. He wouldn't really like to come out. He would keep to himself. Oftentimes you'd find him in the supply closet or under a bed somewhere. This is pretty normal behavior for cats, especially when they are brought to a new and unfamiliar place. As they get scared of all the new sights and sounds, it needs time to get used to their new surroundings. Whilst this is normal for most felines, what Oscar would do next is where things got strange. He seemed to have an uncanny ability to tell when a patient was about to pass on. It wasn't really until someone was near death that Oscar would sort of come out front and center, said Dr. Dosa, who worked closely with the cat during his time in the hospice. The feline would walk around the floor, checking and sniffing at the patients in the room. Sometimes he would simply walk on, and then other times he would jump onto a patient's bed and curl up next to them, almost as if he was offering whatever comfort he could in their final moments. It was these patients who would then pass on only a few hours later. There was definitely something special about this cat. At first, the nurses thought nothing of the cat's behavior and the odd coincidences that would occur with the patients that he had visited. But as it turned out, Dr. Dosa explains, we would eventually find out after he did this several times that the people he was staying with were usually the next ones to go. 1 death occurred, then 2 deaths, and ultimately he hit about 20 or 30 deaths in a row, at which point everybody started to say, wow, this is something quite unique after the patients passed away. Oscar would quietly get up from his spot on the bed and silently leave the room, as if knowing that he was no longer needed there. Soon enough, after this happened a few times, the doctors and nurses started to take note of how the feline was acting and who he was visiting. They then took that as a sign of impending death and subsequently notified the patients' families of what they thought might happen. This amazing little cat afforded people the time to say goodbye to their loved ones before it was too late. And for those patients who didn't have families to visit them, Oscar would stay curled up on their bed until the very end, providing them with companionship and comfort that they might not have otherwise had. During the entire process of the patient's passing, Oscar liked to stay in the room with them. It was as if the cat felt like it was his job to stay and watch over the humans as they passed from this world to the next. Most of the time, this was fine with the patient's family, and they had no issue with the sweet feline being present at the time of death. But every now and then, there were families who preferred to have the cat removed from the room. When this happened, Oscar would pace back and forth in front of the patient's door and meow constantly in protest of being locked out. Luckily, this didn't happen too often. In fact, lots of families had told me that having Oscar around is a great comfort for them and their loved ones, said Dr. Dosa. Whether it's just cuddling up to people who are alone or keeping children busy, it's really something that the families were grateful and thankful for. The feline became well known for his ability and was featured in an article in the New England Journal of Medicine. His story soon went viral, with hundreds of thousands of people coming to know his incredible abilities. He quickly picked up new nicknames, with one being the Angel of Death, which was definitely very fitting for this amazing little tabby. When asked how Oscar was able to predict the deaths of patients, in which he turned out to be right more often than not, Dr. Dosa speculated that, "I think that ultimately your guess is as good as mine. It could be likely that he's responding to some smell when cells start to break down." Unfortunately, in 2013, when Oscar was 8 years old, he suffered a severe allergic reaction and had to be rushed to the vets, where he was put into intensive care. It was a scary time for those who knew and loved the old cat, and at one point it looked like he may not make it, as his heart stopped beating and he died for several seconds. Luckily, some quick-thinking vets managed to revive him. After a bit of time recovering in the vets, to make sure that he was going to be okay, he was released and taken back home to the hospice, where he himself became a patient for a few months. Soon enough, he had regained his health and was back to his old self, visiting those who needed it the most and providing them with comfort. Oscar spent the rest of his life at the hospice on Rhode Island, until eventually passing away himself at the old age of 10 years old. He had ended up predicting the deaths of over 100 patients and provided comfort and love to as many of those people that he could during that time. This amazing cat's ability meant that lots of families were given the time to see their loved ones for one last time and say their final farewells. But it wasn't just the cat's abilities that were the amazing thing. Oscar himself was an incredible animal, as he made the time and effort to comfort those who might have otherwise been scared and alone in their final moments. This adorable little tabby stole the hearts of so many people, and when it came time for him to say goodbye and pass on himself, he was surrounded by those who had loved him dearly, a true testimony to the type of animal that he was. And whilst some people might have worried about the Grim Reaper's cat coming to visit them, I think it was a beautiful way to prepare people for what was to come and reassure them that everything was going to be okay. Would you want a cat to let you know when it was your time to go? Thank you for watching this video, and if you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like and subscribe for more.